To recap just for a second, Dalia has a question about residential versus commercial. Is there anything that she should be doing when it comes to residential property that she shouldn't for commercial and vice versa? And if you could provide it in a little bit of a bullet point, just to kind of give us like step one, if you send her a list and what she needs to be doing and thinking in terms of that, you know, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess when you start about, I guess number one thing, when you talk about investing in property, and it is the thing you're going to do on a regular or one-time purchase, I think the first step in buying property is finding yourself a real estate agent and or broker. And I think that you should interview that person and talk to them and feel comfortable with that person. Okay, because you got to know that that person is working in your best interest. And number two, with that being said, is you want to put it on that particular real estate professional to make sure that the current use of that property is the legal use, the legal use for it. I mean, you go to a property, and let's talk about a multifamily. Single family kind of speaks for itself. You go in a property that's multifamily, and they got 3 families in it, even advertised 3 families. We got to make sure zoning, first of all, says that it can be 3 families there. But definitely, when you talk about legal stuff, you want that agent to know, to find out, is it legal to have 3 people paying stand in a particular property. When I buy property outside of my immediate area, I also, even though I'm a broker, I get an agent in that area to work with me. He knows the customs of that area, and plus he knows what happened. The flooding. For example, like the Boardman area, for example, a lot of those multifamilies are flooding. You would never know that. That's either you know it or that professional. The research said, hey, just want to let you know you're getting a good deal on this property, but what you might run into is flooding on high rains. So I don't know if it answers the question, but definitely you need to utilize an agent or somebody in the area that really is familiar with that area.
Okay. I think did you get your question answered, Dahlia? As far as do
Well,
you have any
part of
follow
it,
up?
and then and following with that, I have another follow-up question because really what I wanted to know is when you have the multifamily, is there any process that I have to go through legally with the, let's say, with the city? For instance, what is my question? For instance, like you said, the multiple dwelling, I didn't know that first of all, that the electricity would be on my account, or the water bill would be on my account. I thought that everybody would have, that is dwelling, would have their separate meter, or will be paying their water bill themselves. And now when you have these multifamily also, is there any license that I have to get? That's the question really that I was asking. Is there any other criteria that I have to fulfill with a multi-dwelling?
Okay. The question, okay, I think your question deals towards rental certifications, which in this case could be making sure that it's up to a specific code, that type of thing, the properties and whatnot. Jerome, can you talk a little bit about that and what she would need to do to make sure that she's compliant?
I would recommend that you go to zoning. If you buy a property in the city of Youngstown, you go to city of Youngstown and say, hey, I'm interested in buying this triplex on Ohio Avenue. What must I know to meet that? Because they may look at the books and say, wait a minute, that thing's not zoned for a triplex. Actually, it's a duplex. If you put somebody in that basement, we're going to cite you. You put somebody in. So before you even purchase it, if that's your concern, you should go to zoning and talk to them, and they're going to tell you yes or no. It's just like sometimes people they buy a property because they're into the Airbnb type stuff. Well, really, in a lot of area in our area, there's certain things you can't do in Airbnb. You can have bed and breakfast in the city of Youngstown, but usually it's no more than 4 units, and you got to live in one. So again, most people don't know that. They think I'm going to rent all 4 units. I'm not moving in there, and I'm going to make 4 things. I don't do it. And again, if you go to the city of Youngstown and say, hey, I'm going to do a multifamily, I'm going to do a bed and breakfast type thing, they'll give you a certificate that says you can do that, and they'll definitely make sure you can do it in that area. But I will tell you from experience and working it, they'll want you to stay there. So those things you need to know for yourself, because you may be counting on putting 3 or 4 people in it, and you can't do it. And then, like I say, when you mentioned a while ago, reference utilities, very important, because nobody never thinks of those until you buy that property and you realize, wait a minute. I mean, what you're talking about in the multifamily is not only utilities. You got to keep in mind, when it's snow, you're gonna have to shovel the snow. When it's grass, you got to cut the grass or pay somebody to do it. Versus single family, where all those duties are done to the renter. So again, there's some multifamilies where you got 1 electric meter, and if you got 2 or 3 tenants, they're always going to blame the other party for using more of that particular utility.
Thank you so
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I think
you bring up an important point again too, when we're talking about a rental property in the city of Youngstown. The city of Youngstown have property inspection. Okay. They have farmed that out to Section 8 in the past to do their inspection form as far as inspecting their property. So basically, what they're holding you to do is meet Section 8 guidelines to rent property. Sometimes it comes to be challenging in that manner also, because from my experience in doing some Section 8 property, I find myself annually putting $2,000 to $3,000 in the property every year. So you got to be careful on those when you're doing that too, because again, those are expenses you're not expecting. So none that comes off your bottom line right there every year. Because what'll happen is they'll come 1 year and they'll tell you to do all these things, and you'll say fine. Next year you get a different inspector, and he names 5 other things that the previous inspector never named. So it gets challenging when you do that. And like I said, when you're accepting such a tenant, even though you say you got a multi-family property and you're renting unit number 1, when that inspector comes, he is inspecting that whole building. So he's not just on that unit downstairs which you're renting. He's on the second floor if he sees something he wants you to do. So it's challenging there. And so again, that's what I'm saying about when you talk about multifamily, gaining a relationship with those type of inspectors and understanding what they're looking for, or working with somebody who definitely knows most of the things that they're going to look for.
Okay. The only other question, the question I had was, it's about making money when you buy. That was always a big thing when I was learning about investing. And especially when you're talking about a 4-unit building, like one of the strategies would be making the purchase with the idea that you're only going to rent half of it. You spoke a little bit about that, where you're not necessarily going to be able to rent them all and whatnot, and basically containing your purchase price to make sure that you are covered. So if long as I can get 2 people in there, I can at least break even, that type of thing. Like, can you talk a little bit about that as it relates to this process, or is that even still a thing that even factor because of the market?
Oh, right. And that's why I go to my major expenses. And again, number 1 is the roof and the heating in this area. And I would say probably the air. Because this is the thing you have to look at down, because again, when you buying multifamilies on a budget today, a lot of them never came with air. And this is the thing. Say for example, you buy a unit that have steam heat. You can't add a conventional air conditioning unit in that building. They don't have the ductwork for it. So you have to really kind of look at the different scenarios, and going back to doing that again. Okay, you definitely, you want to make sure you got at least 2 rented, but you got to know, even at 2 rented, what other things you got to make sure that's going to happen to produce that money. And again, or that you can get something fixed in a reasonable amount of time to keep the tenants in there. And like I say, your biggest struggle when we talk about multifamily though, is 2-4 is you got to do your due diligence when you're finding a tenant. You know, that's when you talk about we talk about credit checks and accountability and jobs. You need to do that because again, you want somebody who wants to come, who pays the rent, who don't have time to start commotion with the other tenants. You know, one thing about it, you ready to rent that property, so somebody say, "Here, I'll pay you 2 months ahead of time." That first payment is not your biggest thing. Who you're dealing with, so it's not. Unfortunately, there's not a book on all things. All things you learn as you go along to get there. But again, mechanical. You can definitely deal with the mechanics of the property. And 2, take your time when you tenants. If you say I want a credit score ABC, stand with it. Because in the day, somebody who takes care of their credit, you're not going to ruin it by not paying the rent. And number 2, definitely follow up and see if they ever been evicted before. You know, if they say I lived here and there, get details. Because again, it's easy to get somebody in that property, but it's a lot harder to get them out.